and welcome back to Sports Talk with Dad. This is a show where we talk about sports based on our own generational perspectives. My name is Kyle, and this could not be Sports Talk with Dad without the man sitting next to me, a man who has lived through 3 out of the last 4 ice ages, my dad, Tim.
You know, you get me smiling before this thing even starts because I just want to hear how creative you're going to get.
I have to let the entire internet know that you are ancient. It's my own moral responsibility with doing this show. Moving on, now that you know how old he is, we are going to be talking about the NFL playoffs this week. In case you missed it, we already did a video that we dropped yesterday on the AFC, and it is linked in the description below. And while you're down there, like and subscribe and hit that little bell notification. We do a show at least once a week. You might as well get notified every time it drops so you can enjoy this show as much as we enjoy making this show. Today is NFC and Super Bowl champion.
Correct. And we decided to do this a little bit different because we know you can get your analysis of the current players all over the ESPN, all over the internet. We went a little different way. We decided to base our picks on each franchise's Mount Rushmore.
With a couple of caveats here. So we have to pick a quarterback and can only pick one quarterback. So we can't pick Bart Starr, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers on our Mount Rushmore. We have to choose one of them. And then you also have to pick a defensive player. So it can be one quarterback and 3 defensive players. It can be QB, defense, and then 2 offensive weapons. Only rules we have.
Well, I added in one. I decided to go one player per franchise. So Reggie couldn't be on the Packers or the Eagles, and Brady couldn't be on New England and whatever the team is down south. So, hey, we lived there for 15 years.
And they beat us in the playoffs, so we don't have to mention them by name.
That's right. So why don't we get into it?
All right, let's do it. As we mentioned, we are talking NFL playoffs. We're using the same brackets that are out there today, so this is where everybody's ranked. We're just, again, using the Mount Rushmore for the best players. We're going to jump into the first game here. It is Eagles versus Tampa Bay. Some great players in here. Let's jump right into the Eagles. You and I both chose Donovan McNabb. To me, it was an easy decision. Donovan McNabb, 98 and 62 and 1, 9 and 7 in the playoffs, had all those NFC championships. It was always fun to watch him run around and make plays happen.
It was, and I actually I remember Ron Jaworski taking the team to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I remember Randall Cunningham. I know you do as well. There really wasn't another choice. So Donovan McNabb is by far the most successful and the most dominant quarterback that the Eagles have ever had.
Yeah, and I looked at Randall Cunningham. To me, he'll always be a Viking. You know, I remember him with Randy Moss and Chris Carter making those playoff runs in the 90s. Again, he's a Viking for me. If we had a Viking list, he would probably be my Vikings quarterback.
Oh, he wouldn't be my Vikings quarterback, but they're not in the playoffs, so we can't get into that.
Chuck Bednarik, Concrete Charlie, easy choice on the defensive side. The last man to play both ways. Unbelievable player.
He was a center. He was a linebacker. He missed 3 games out of his entire career.
That's
I think
crazy.
He played around 200 games. He's just unbelievably dominant. But I think what most people, certainly what I remember, is in just when you do the research, the most vicious hit probably in the history of the NFL when Frank Gifford was coming across the middle and Bednarik took him out for 18 months.
A guy that I'd want on my side in a bar fight would be terrified if he was on the opposite side in a bar fight.
If I'm on the opposite side, I just concede, buy him a beer, and walk out of the door.
Done. Agreed. Brian Dawkins also on both of our lists. Not much to say here. One of the most transcendent safeties in my time, at least. Man had 26 sacks. He had 37 interceptions, 4 in the playoffs. A big reason for all those NFC championship runs.
He was one of the first safeties I can remember who really was a danger to cover, but also that he could come in and he can get a sack and be there on the blitz.
Yeah, he was everywhere. Wherever the ball was, you were going to find Brian Dawkins. We did go different with our 4th player. Not because I disagree with you on this one. I do have Reggie White on my Packer list. You have Reggie White on your Eagles list.
The Minister of Defense, number 92, retired by both the Packers and the Eagles. I consider him a Packer, but I always put him on those dominant defenses that he played on with the Eagles. Um, he had 98 sacks. Uh, he just was a man who shouldn't have been as strong as he was. To do the way he would hook a player as he came around the end, definitely the most feared defensive end that I can ever remember in my lifetime.
That swim move was amazing of his. I remember him in the Super Bowl when the Packers were there when he threw the right tackle aside and went after Drew Bledsoe. To me, it's a play I'll always remember as a Packer fan. Definitely understand you having him here. I went Terrell Owens. I'm honestly shocked you don't have him on your list.
He's one of the greatest wide receivers we've seen, probably second only to Jerry Rice. I put him in the same level as like Michael Irvin.
The guy's third all time in yards. He's third all time in touchdowns and receptions. Was dominant when he was with the Eagles. Also had a great run with the Cowboys, the 49ers. Every team he was on got better by his presence.
He's taken a hit for some of his off-field antics, but when he was on the field, he was the most dangerous receiver on the field for
Don't
whatever
forget,
team he
he
played on.
played in the Super Bowl with a broken foot and still would have been the Super Bowl MVP had the Eagles won that game.
Yes, he would have. And it was a great pick, but again, it just came down to me. If I'm thinking Eagles, I'm thinking Reggie White, so I put him there.
Well, let's get on to Tampa Bay. This is where I had to break our rule. I tried to find a quarterback. I honestly forgot all about Steve Young being on Tampa Bay. But if we're looking at quarterbacks that had a ton of success with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady was the only choice. The dude's 24-9. He's thrown 83 touchdowns already, has almost thrown for 10,000 yards, won a Super Bowl for Tampa Bay, and he's been there for 2 years.
I get it, but again, I tried to stick to my rule. I had to look really deep,
Yeah.
and I did find out, and I had forgotten that Young actually played there for a year, so I picked him. He was a Hall of Fame quarterback. I put him on the team.
Understand you're following your own rule. The rest we pretty much agreed on. Leroy Selman, we were there when he was inducted into the Ring of Honor for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They happened to play the Packers that day. Absolutely dominant player for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense.
Warren Sapp, probably the best trash talker I can ever remember seeing. Him and Brett Favre going at it time and time again. 77 sacks, another dominant. And he was drafted in 1995.
Right.
They drafted another player in 1995. The other person on both of our lists, Derek Brooks.
I mean, that's that. Think about that. We had teams that had a first round with Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks, and then the next year we had a team in the Baltimore Ravens that had first round picks that went on to be Hall of Famers as well. What a way to make that team stronger and make them onto that Super Bowl run in the early 2000s.
Honestly, if they don't make the pick of Brooks and Sapp, they don't win the Super Bowl they did.
No, they don't. And I love the story. I have some friends that are Buccaneers fans, and they always tell me the story of John Gruden. When he came, he looked at the defense and said, listen, if we're going to win a Super Bowl, I need my defense to score 9 touchdowns. And in that Super Bowl versus the Raiders, that was their 9th touchdown that they scored as a defense. And sure enough, it got him the Super Bowl ring.
He probably said that because he wasn't confident his offense would get him 9
That's
touchdowns.
true, but it was work done in Mike Allstott on that team.
Sure.
So, I mean, they definitely relied a lot on time management and that running game.
They had Brad Johnson on that team, definitely a game manager, could make a throw when he needed to, but his basic play was turn around and find his running backs.
And off the ball.
That's
You got it. So the big question is, we have our Mount Rushmore of each team. Who do you got?
I looked at both of them, and they're close. That being said, I went with the Eagles because I think if you look at their entire history, the most iconic Mount Rushmore for me was the Eagles.
See, I look at that defense with Selman, Sapp, and Brooks, and I just don't think Donovan McNabb's going to be able to breathe. I mean, I think Tom Brady's going to be able to get that ball out fast enough, but I
Really?
just don't see what that offense could ever do with those 3 guys on defense.
You have Chuck Bednarik going up the middle. You have Reggie White coming around the end, playing with the rules that they had to play with back in, I'd prefer back when Chuck was playing. Brady beat on his back all afternoon.
It's possible. I'm never going to take the balls out of Brady's hands. I just can't do it. I'm going to trust in Tom Brady, and that defense is so dominant.
You're using your own argument. You've got Terrell Owens on the team. You've got Donovan McNabb. He's going to get the ball to him. The Eagles are going to win that game.
Agree to disagree. We're going to move on to the next game. This was one of the hardest picks I had to make in this entire process. I mean, these are
Mine
two
too.
iconic teams that were literally teams of their own decades. Let's get into it. We're going to go San Francisco 49ers. We both went with Joe Montana. I don't think there's even much of a conversation here.
No, there's not. I mean, Montana, one of the all-time great quarterbacks, 4 rings. He just led that team on the drive. You know, you had Dwight Clark making the catch. I'll never say Joe Montana isn't a great quarterback. Easy pick.
117-47 record, two-time MVP, almost brought the Chiefs into the Super Bowl as well when he left the 49ers. Easy conversation here. Ronnie Lott is another one where, again, it's an easy conversation. The man bit off his finger
He did not
so he could
bite his
still play.
finger off.
Listen, it's a more fun story. He bit off his finger.
He did not bite off his finger. He had it removed. One of the toughest defensive backs to ever play the game. Obvious pick on their Mount Rushmore.
Jerry Rice, both of our list. I mean, the dude's first in receiving touchdowns, receptions. He's the greatest wide receiver we've ever seen.
You know, what I love about Jerry Rice, though, he's also a historian of the game. They asked him about what he did as a receiver, and he said, look, give credit to the guys who were here before me. He mentioned Don Hudson by name and said he invented a lot of the routes I run. So I respect him for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a story where he goes, his first game he drops 2 passes, right? He's almost in tears on the sideline, and he worked day in and day out, and I don't think he ever dropped another pass.
There's not many I can remember him doing. Greatest of all time as a wide receiver.
Agreed.
To date.
We get different on the last list. You go Deion Sanders, which he's on my Cowboy list even before we reveal this. So going by your rule, I couldn't have him on both. I remember him as a Cowboy. You clearly remember him more as a San Francisco Niner.
I did. I don't know why, because I saw him on both teams, but I always think of him as a 49er. What I loved about Deion was that he was a shutdown corner. Nobody threw to the side of the ball that he was on. I looked up some fun facts about him. Obviously a two-sport athlete.
Right.
I forgot when he was in the World Series, he hit .533 that World Series. So
Are you serious?
I am, yeah. They lost to the Blue Jays, but he was that good.
I didn't know he did that. I knew he was a good baseball player. I didn't realize he was that good.
Yeah. And he's also a Hall of Fame football player.
Yeah.
Maybe the greatest by most measures I look at, greatest back of all time.
He's up there.
I mean, he wasn't much of a tackler. Nobody's going to accuse him of that. He was a great punt returner.
He's just an athlete, an unbelievable athlete that you didn't throw the ball in his direction.
And now turned into an unbelievable coach.
He is. What a recruiter. I went Frank Gore. Hear me out. This guy is third on the rushing list with 16,000 yards. He had 81 rushing touchdowns, included with 4,000 receiving yards and 18 receiving touchdowns. This guy played in every single game he was in. He literally only played less than 14 games once as a running back, only once, and that was 11 games, and it was because he got hurt towards the end of the season. This guy was a horse, and he was a guy who could catch and run the ball.
I could see why you picked him. I thought of him. I thought of Roger Craig. There were several running backs and other 49ers you could have put on the list. I just think I picked the most iconic ones.
Understandable. We're going to move on to the Cowboys. You and I have a difference of opinion here when it comes to quarterbacks. You go Roger Staubach.
Absolutely. Captain Comeback. He was unbelievable, and I think he gets forgotten in a lot of the current era. He played from 69 to 79. He was a 2-time Super Bowl winner, Super Bowl 6, Super Bowl 12, 153 TDs, 22,700 passing yards. He was on the 70s All-Decade team. He went into the Hall of Fame in 1985. But what is great about Roger Staubach, he won the Heisman as a naval cadet.
Right.
He was drafted by the Cowboys in 64, but he couldn't play with them until 69 because he had to complete his tour of service. And so he was in Vietnam. He was awarded the Medal of Honor in 2018. Great guy.
Listen, I can't argue. I think he's an amazing quarterback. However, Troy Aikman, 3 Super Bowls, Super Bowl MVP, 11-4 in the playoffs, 6-time Pro Bowler. And the big thing is, there's a forgotten quarterback with the Cowboys and Don Meredith. I mean, the man who was on the Ice Bowl team, who was on the NFL championship team before that, and literally walked away from the game at age 31 after losing to the Ice Bowl. He was done. He couldn't do it anymore. Roger Staubach said himself that Super Bowl 6 was Don Meredith's Super Bowl. That was his team.
Don Meredith, if you folks haven't watched the profile that his son has put together, you should watch it. It was a great video. I didn't realize some of the things I learned in there. Don Meredith, for most of my generation, was remembered for Monday Night Football, and he made Monday Night Football along with Howard Cosell. I remember him singing "Turn Out the Lights, the Party's Over." That was in the 70s. That was a version of "There
Really
Is Your
happy you
Dagger."
didn't try and sing that song.
They're never going to get me to try and sing that song, but Don Meredith, honestly, I think should be in the Hall of Fame as a player.
I do too, and especially when Roger Staubach himself says that was Don Meredith's Super Bowl. You just don't talk about Roger Staubach in the same way. I mean, we're talking Don Meredith in this conversation. So from that perspective, Troy Aikman was the decision for me.
I get it, but Staubach was Captain Comeback. He was the NFC's quarterback of the decade. In the Super Bowls in the 70s, it was the Cowboys, the Steelers, and the
Yeah,
Raiders
but
were
Roger
tossed in there.
Staubach walks onto a team that had just been to 2 NFL championships. Troy Aikman walks onto a team that literally had the #1 overall pick when he was drafted. He got benched in his first year and then came back and won 3 Super Bowls.
I give that credit to Jimmy Johnson for going out and making the Herschel Walker trade that allowed the Cowboys to build more than I give it to Troy Aikman. He was a good game manager. Turned around,
Game manager.
He turned around and handed the ball to Emmitt Smith. He could make a pass, but he also, when you have a target like Michael Irvin, your job is a lot easier.
I think it's an insult to call Troy Aikman a game manager, considering he was the quarterback for 3 Super Bowls.
He's in that game manager category, along with Bob Greasy, a couple others.
Agree to disagree. You and I both went Bob Lilly, Mr. Cowboy. I don't think we need to really go much into that one.
First overall draft pick for the Cowboys, the leader of the early doomsday defense teams. No, he was an obvious pick. I don't think, I thought about Randy Wright, but when it comes down to it, you can't go have a Mount Rushmore if you don't have Mr. Cowboy on the list.
Emmitt Smith, again, on both of our lists, all-time leading rusher in yards and all-time leading in rushing touchdowns as well. Again, an obvious choice.
Yeah. Cowboys have had some great running backs, but Emmitt Smith is an all-time great. So had to be on the list.
As I already mentioned this. I went Deion Sanders. I think of him as a Cowboy. We already went into Deion. You went Michael Irvin. You've mentioned him a couple of times now.
The playmaker. He was a guy that would always go out and find the ball. He had a great little slide move that never got penalized for some reason. He had 4,700-yard passing games, almost 12,000 yards receiving yards, 65 touchdowns, 750 career receptions, most Pro Bowls of any Cowboy wide receiver. I just put him, if Jerry Rice is at the very top, Michael Irvin is one half step below.
I can't argue with the pick. Again, to me, Deion was more impactful on those teams, in my opinion. You obviously already had him on the 49ers. You both think he's an all-time great. I'm not going to argue with Michael Irvin. He was an unbelievable wide receiver.
He was. He, again, had some off-the-field issues, but when he got on the field, he was dynamic.
Lights out. So the big question is...
Flip the coin on this one.
It's tough. It's tough. For me, I do go Joe Montana better than Troy Aikman. Ronnie Lott and Bob Lilly are washes for me. I got to go San Francisco on this one. I know you disagree. You go with Dallas.
I went to Cowboys, and actually, I looked at it, and I went, the lists are equal. I flipped a coin. I went to the coaches, Tom Landry over Bill Walsh. And I went with the Cowboys.
I can't agree with that.
Tom Landry.
Even a little bit.
Tom Landry, Jimmy Johnson, either one of them over Bill Walsh. Let's put it this way. Tom Landry was the guy who invented the multi function offense that they were running, standing up while the Back guys in the back are
The
moving their
Wolf
motion. The
invented the West
shotgun,
Coast
that's
offense.
fine. That's fine. He learned from Tom Landry. I give it to the guy who was the original inventor.
We're going to move forward on this one. We could spend all day on that. We're going to move on to the Cardinals and the Rams. Talk
Which
about
is
two
wrong.
historic franchises that haven't had a lot of players to dig into.
Well, the Rams kind of have, the Cardinals not so much, but the Cardinals have got a good list.
They do. It's the oldest team in football. Started in Chicago, then went to St. Louis. Now are in Phoenix and are the Arizona Cardinals. We went the same with the quarterback with Jim Hart, a man who was there for 17 years, 87, 88, and 5 record, 209 touchdowns. He was the anchor for that offense for a very long time.
Yeah, he was the NFL quarterback of the year at one point. He's the only quarterback I really remember growing up for the Cardinals. So for me, it was an easy choice. I always loved watching him play. He was just very steady, was going to make the plays, and just playing there from 66 to 83.
Yeah, I almost put Jake Plummer up here, Jake the Snake. I think he was a lot better than his record dictated, just because he didn't have a lot of support on those teams. But I think Jim Hart's the obvious choice at the end of the day. Defense, we went different. I cannot believe Larry Wilson is not on your list.
He's not, but I went with Aeneas Williams on this pick. He was one of the greatest shutdown corners. Played in the 90s. He went into the Hall of Fame in 2014. He was drafted in 1991. And the first year as a rookie, he finished second in interceptions. 6 straight Pro Bowl selections. Again, I tried to look at the team as a whole and tried to grab somebody from a different eras, and I went with Aeneas
Larry
Williams.
Wilson is a 6-time first-team All-Pro. He's on the All-Decade team in the 60s and the 70s. Plus, he has one of the scariest faces I've ever seen. I mean, if I'm staring at that guy, I don't want to catch the ball just to stay away.
Certainly looked at him. I think arguably Aeneas Williams is going to be in that conversation for the greatest of all time. So he was on my list.
We also went different with the third player here. You go Jackie Smith.
Jackie Smith, the greatest tight end before guys like Tony Gonzalez and Gronk came along. Played for a long time, 16 seasons. He was drafted in 10th round in 1963, caught over 40 passes 7 times in an era where they didn't really throw to the tight ends. He retired. He was a tight end leader in receptions with 480 yards, just under 8,000 yards, and 40 TDs.
But what is he remembered for?
I know he's remembered for dropping that pass in the Super Bowl. It was in his hands, but you know what? I'm not going to grade somebody on their one bad moment, especially when it wasn't for the team that I'm talking about right now.
I will. And so I don't have him on my list. I have Dick Night Train Lane.
He's a lion.
He is a Cardinal. He played for the Cardinals for 5 years back when they were in Chicago. This guy's 4th all-time on the interceptions list, 7-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time interception leader, both while with the Cardinals.
You ask anybody, and I want the parents, I want the dads to weigh in on this. When you think of Night Train Lane, he's a Detroit Lion.
Understand, but he was also a Ram. He could have been on my Ram list as well. He had amazing, impactful years when it comes to his time with the Chicago Cardinals. He's even on the Arizona Cardinals Ring of Honor.
Bottom line, he's an all-time great player.
He is. He was ranked number 30 on the top 100 players of all time for a reason. I couldn't leave him off my list. Larry Fitzgerald, you and I both went with. Honestly, I think that if Larry Fitzgerald had played on a team like the Packers or the Cowboys or any number of teams, the Patriots,
Oh my God, if he played on the Patriots,
Colts, I don't think Jerry Rice holds a record anymore.
Probably not. I mean, he is Mr. Cardinal. He's the greatest player in Cardinal history, and he really non-question pick for this list.
Yeah, like I said, the fact that he didn't ask for a trade out of the Arizona Cardinals speaks volumes to what he thinks of that organization in that city.
Yeah, Arizona's a nice place to live.
It is. It is. We're going to go on to the Rams here. I went Matthew Stafford as my quarterback for the
He's been there for a minute and a half.
Fastest quarterback to 45,000 yards, is 4th most in comebacks all time.
Oh, do a little research on the history of a franchise before you just grab somebody. Oh, Matthew Stafford's going to lead them to the playoffs this year, so I'll put him on my list.
Yeah, if you look back at the history of all the players that have played for the Rams, Matthew Stafford is by far the best quarterback to ever suit up for
He's a
the
modern
Rams.
quarterback that's got all the rules to his advantage, so it's an easy pick to make. Oh, he'll throw the ball all around. Nope. I went back in time and grabbed Norm Van Brocklin, an iconic, great quarterback from the past. Let me tell you a little bit. He led the Rams to the 51 championships. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler. He's currently still fourth in passing. That's going to be passed, obviously, for passing yards with the Rams. Third most wins for the Rams, and he led the Rams to 6 straight winning seasons.
But like
He
you just
is,
said, he's going to be passed for
yes, but
passing yards. And who's going to pass him?
anybody who plays today,
Matthew Stafford's going to pass him. Matthew Stafford is the
Goff would
best
have passed him.
quarterback to suit up in a Rams uniform.
No. If he plays there for a few years, perhaps he'll get there, but he's been there for a second and a half, not even a minute and a half.
A good second and a half.
Do some research, learn your history. We went with Norm Van Brocklin, much better of the two.
Deacon Jones is our defensive player, probably the all-time leader in sacks if you went back and counted him. They obviously didn't start counting those until 1982.
In his mind, he had over 400 sacks.
Yeah, he probably also almost gave 400 concussions to offensive linemen, slapping them in the head.
Hey, that was just a stunning. I could not imagine being on the receiving end of one of those hits.
I don't think I'd still be standing.
No. I mean, you had Deacon Jones, you had Merlin Olsen, Rosie Greer, the fearsome foursome. It was just a scary, scary line. I remember watching Bart Starr play against those guys, and I don't know how he stood in there and made some of the passes when you had that kind of a rush coming at you. Deacon Jones epitomizes for me what a Ram is.
I agree. We did go different on the last two players as well. I went Marshall Faulk for my running back. You went Eric Dickerson.
Of course, I went Eric Dickerson. I think when I think of the Rams of that time frame, the 80s to the 2000s, Eric Dickerson is an obvious choice for me. Marshall Faulk was great, but Dickerson has number 29 retired, 6-time Pro Bowler, single season rushing leader to still today, 2105?
Yep.
Led the NFL in rushing 84, 83, 86, and 88. Player of the year in 86. Eric Dickerson, to me, is a Rams running back.
Marshall Faulk changed the way we look at running backs. MVP in 2000, 3-time Offensive Player of the Year, 3-time All-Pro nod. Number also retired for the Rams. I mean, he's really the first back we think of that flies out of the backfield and is able to run up the middle and make those cuts.
No, I think of Eric Dickerson doing that.
Oh, Eric Dickerson caught the ball out of the backfield.
A little bit, but he didn't need to. He just ran the ball to daylight.
Marshall Faulk didn't need to either, but he was a part of the greatest show on turf and was able to do it, and running backs haven't been the same since.
I think we're splitting hairs on two iconic running backs.
Probably. We did go different on the last ones as well. Aaron Donald, I couldn't leave off my list. 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, 6-time First-Team All-Pro. He's already been named to the 2010s All-Decade team. You mentioned Deacon Jones. I can't leave Aaron Donald off my list for the same reason. He speaks Rams to me.
Well, again, trying to grab somebody from different eras. I could have went with Merlin Olsen very easily and almost did. But instead, I grabbed Jack Youngblood, who played there for 14 seasons, 201 consecutive games. But what I remember most about him is in the playoffs of 1979, he played the entire playoffs and the entire game in the Super Bowl with a broken freaking leg. Toughest man I've ever seen.
I don't blame you for having him on the list. Again, I had to make my choices, so did you. We went different routes. Question is 4 versus 4. I think you and I agreed on this one.
I think this is an easy choice on this one. The Rams.
Both went Rams. I mean, Matthew Stafford versus Jim Hart for me. It was an easy choice. That defensive line plus Marshall Faulk included in there. I don't know many teams that can beat him.
I don't think so either. As good as Larry Fitzgerald is, he's really the one standout on the list. Rams all day.
So this is what we got. You have the Packers versus Eagles facing each other, and the Rams versus the Cowboys. I have Packers versus Rams, and the Niners versus the Buccaneers. Should we just get right into it?
Let's do it.
All right. The Packers we haven't talked about yet, so we have to pick our Mount Rushmore. Out the gates, we disagree with the quarterback. You go Bart Starr, I go Aaron Rodgers.
Of course, I go Bart Starr. 5 championships, 7 years. The man still holds the record for playoff win percentage with 91%. That'll be a record I don't think will ever be broken. Went into the Hall of Fame in 1977. And you said something yesterday when you were talking about Tom Brady. Everybody just says, yeah, he's the GOAT. I can make a strong case for Bart Starr being the GOAT. He could play in any generation. He could tailor his game. He thought his way around the field. He's probably the most underrated player in football history. My choice, easy,
I
Bart
agree
Starr.
with you that he's underrated, but are you seriously sitting here and telling me Aaron Rodgers couldn't go into any generation and win?
Yes. The rules have changed so drastically to protect the quarterback and allow Rodgers. You know I love Rodgers. Don't
I
look at
don't
me like
believe you
that.
anymore.
I don't think he could go back in time and take the hits that he would have to take.
This is a man that had 2 broken collarbones and came back in that same season. He's been walking without a toe and
Mhm.
rolling out and making throws that are unbelievable.
He has never had to face Deacon Jones. He's never
He's
had to
had to
face
face Aaron
Merlin
Donald.
Olsen. I don't,
He's had to face J.J. Watt.
not sorry, not as vicious as it was back in the day. I'm going to take Bart
Aaron
Starr.
Rodgers is going to become a 4-time MVP this
Has he
year.
won 5 in 7 years?
You can't just look at what he's been able to do throughout his
Did he win
career.
3 in a
Look at
row?
the talent Aaron Rodgers has had around him. Besides Devontae Adams, I mean, he had Jordy Nelson for a little while. He had Randall Cobb. Look what he's been able to do the last 2 years.
I'm going to go with the quarterback, and the only quarterback in modern football to win 3 championships in a row.
Listen, I love Bart Starr.
Apparently not.
I do. I think he's unbelievable. I agree with you that he's underrated, but I think looking at this and saying Aaron Rodgers isn't the choice. Now, I want him to win the championship this year, and that definitely solidifies. Watching him this year play, I've never seen him look like this. He is determined. I have loved the swagger he's had. I don't think anybody can beat us with him as their quarterback right now.
Well, I hope you're right. He's certainly, to use an old Rocky term, he's got the eye of the tiger this year.
He does. He
I
does.
just
Matt LaFleur is an unbelievable coach to go with it. I have to go Aaron Rodgers. We could argue about this all day. Moving on,
and
I went
probably will, by the way.
probably will. Went on to defense here. Reggie White is my choice. We already talked about Reggie White. Obvious pick for me. He is the defensive player of my childhood. I couldn't leave him off my list. You go Ray Nitschke.
Ray Nitschke, the linebacker of the Packer Lombardi era, one of the most violent men on the field you would ever see. Hall of Famer, easy choice for me. When I couldn't have Reggie White because of my own rule, I go to Ray Nitschke.
The
Other
man who
than Dick.
broke Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, but when you think of football back in the '60s and linebackers, it's Butkus, it's Nitschke. They're a horse apiece.
Yep.
Um,
Both from the University of Illinois. Both unbelievable athletes.
How are those Illinois teams when you go from Nitschke to Butkus? Both of which.
Glad I didn't play quarterback in the Big Ten at that time.
Yeah, exactly. That would not have been a fun thing to do. It couldn't have been fun to be going across the middle or to be a running back trying to run through because Nitschke was a run-stopping machine.
Yeah. Going back real quick to Aaron Rodgers and Bart Starr, think about this. Both on our list, both underrated quarterbacks coming out of college. Bart Starr wasn't even a starter in Alabama. Aaron Rodgers has to go to junior college and then falls in the draft for whatever reason. I mean, it's just a great comparison between.
And actually Bart Starr mentored Aaron Rodgers when he got here. He took him aside. He had a bad night that night. Nobody's going to argue that.
Yes, he
And
did.
he just brought him aside and said, "Look, just watch.
Yep.
It's going to pay you dividends." And then Rodgers took it from there and studied. And he and Bart Starr were close, just as Brett Favre and Bart Starr were close. Um, you know, Bart Starr was really the mentor to both quarterbacks.
He was, and El Favre definitely stepped in, and I think has been a huge help to Aaron Rodgers through this last little bit
They've
here.
gotten much closer as time's went on.
I agree. Going on to the next pick, you choose Charles Woodson.
I did. I did. I know it's kind of a surprise pick, but when you look at when he joined the team, he was just, he moved from being a corner to a safety when he got here. And again, he was that guy you didn't know if he was going to go into coverage or if he was going to go through and make a sack. Um,
I loved watching Charles Woodson play.
Charles Woodson, it was one of my favorite ever defensive players to watch.
It's by far Ted Thompson's greatest free agent signing.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, okay, yeah, it
It's
was.
not even close.
It was. It was. And we're going to hear from. Hopefully, we'll hear from the people watching. I know a lot of people are going to consider Woodson a Raider. I think of him as a Packer, and I think Woodson thinks of himself as a Packer. He didn't want to leave and go back to the Raiders.
He didn't. I still don't know why we let him leave. He should have retired a Packer Hall of Famer now. I go Paul Hornung. I did cheat a little bit here because Paul Hornung was the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers when he first came in, but he's remembered as a running back. The man who made the halfback sweep go.
Yep.
He was the heart and soul of the Green Bay Packers of the 50s.
He was. He was Lombardi's son for all intents and purposes. With that backfield with Jim Taylor, Paul Hornung,
We had what 4 years in a row with 1,000-yard rushers for both Jim
both.
Taylor and Paul Hornung.
Yeah, they made the Packers sweep go. Paul Hornung is a great pick. My question, and I want an answer from Packer leadership. Why the hell haven't you retired number 5?
I don't get it either. Like we had Blake Bortles come in this year, who's worn number 5 his entire career in high school, college, and pros. Yet he comes to Green Bay and wears number 9.
Number
Obviously, you're not going to let anybody wear that number. Just put it up on the rafters and call it a day.
Nobody should wear that number. I mean, I feel sorry for Hornung. He lost a year because he was a greeter at a casino.
Times change, huh?
Times changed a lot. I feel very bad for him and Alex Karras, who both had to sit out a year just for shaking hands. Not fair.
Nope. On the last one, we both went wide receivers. You go old school Don Hudson. I had to go Devontae Adams.
I went with the Alabama Antelope, the guy who basically is, well, not basically, he is considered the first modern wide receiver. We talked about it. Jerry Rice said, look, that guy invented most of the routes
Right.
I'm running. He was a 488 career receptions, invented the routes, as I said. He was also the team's kicker back during that day. He was the MVP in the league in 41 and 42. Absolutely needs to be on the Packers Mount Rushmore.
I get the pick. He retired over what, $500? One of $500 more to be paid the highest player
Different
in the
time.
league, and the dude retires because the Packers won't pay him.
He was the first player with 1,000 yards in receiving.
Yeah.
And the thing is, his record of 100 touchdowns,
99 touchdowns.
or 99 touchdowns, excuse me, stood until Steve Largent broke it in the 1980s. So
Yeah.
It stood for decades.
And I think you're going to see it broken as long as we can keep Rodgers and Adams with the Packers. I think he'll break that as well and become the all-time touchdown leader. I mean, this guy is our weapon and has been for years. He's being triple teamed and still putting up the yards that he's putting up and getting the scores that he is. He's got the best footwork of anybody.
He's the best receiver in football, not even close right now. He may pass him, and I think Don Hudson will be very proud to hand the mantle over to Devontae Adams with what he's done. Because remember, when he first got here, he struggled a little bit.
He had a bad first year, but again, work ethic, right? All
Right.
these great guys we've talked about work ethic nonstop. He got to work and transformed his game to become, like you said, the best wide receiver in the league. Right?
Yeah, and he may go down as the best wide receiver in Packer history. Best feet and footwork. Nobody can touch him when he makes that first move.
Green Bay, please bring Rodgers and Adams back. I'd like to continue to watch this and have Adams break Don Hudson's record. But we're gonna move on to pick our winners. I don't think we really even need to talk about this.
No, I mean, when you think of the Mount Rushmores for all of football, the history of the football or history of the NFL is in Green Bay. They've got the best Mount Rushmore of any team.
Yeah, I mean, both of our quarterbacks beat the quarterbacks of the teams we chose to go against. It was a pretty easy decision.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to go on here. So you have Rams versus Cowboys based on your picks. I have Niners versus Buccaneers on my list. Again, this became a pretty easy decision for me. I mean, you got Joe Montana and Jerry Rice.
Got
I don't need
Roger
to talk about
Staubach,
this
Bob
much.
Lilly, Michael Irvin, Emmett Smith. The Cowboys are going to win that game.
Yep, easy discussion. That puts us into the NFC Championship. I have Niners Packers. You have Cowboys Packers 2.0 of the Ice Bowl, which we may see this year. That Cowboys have a good team.
More importantly, it's going to be Mike McCarthy versus Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be interesting.
Oh, it's a scary game. Scary game. We got to get there first, though. So my picks are Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Ronnie Lott, and Frank Gore versus Aaron Rodgers, Reggie White, Paul Hornung, and Devontae Adams. You, Roger Staubach, Bob Lilly, Emmett Smith, Michael Irvin versus Bart Starr, Ray Nitschke, Charles Woodson, and Don Hudson. I would pay astronomical amount of money to watch these games.
It would be great. But I think the winners are pretty obvious if we're going on each team's Mount Rushmore. I've got to go with the Packers, and that's not being a homer. That's just being an honest evaluator of the Mount Rushmores.
It's hard for me. This is the history of the NFL. We're looking at 3 teams here. Like you mentioned, this is the history of the NFL. We could put the Steelers in here as well.
Bears.
The Bears. Oh, the Bears have some amazing players. Again, a team that needs to figure out the quarterback side of things.
And the Bears still have the most Hall of Famers with 30. Packers are closing up quick with 26.
Yeah, I think we're going to go over that limit soon, but I also had to go with the Packers as my NFC champions. To me, again, not being a homer, I put a lot of thought into this. I honestly was trying to talk myself into taking the 49ers, and I couldn't. It just Mount Rushmore versus Mount Rushmore. I couldn't make this pick. If you can make this pick for the 49ers, let me know why, but I had to go Green Bay Packers.
When you get into the Super Bowl, I went against the Bills.
Yep, I went against the Titans. This was hard. So for me, I 100% think Warren Moon is a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. I love Aaron Rodgers. Warren Moon should be going down as the greatest quarterback of all time.
He's in the conversation, and he doesn't get included often enough. He was one of the smartest quarterbacks. He was one of the bigger quarterbacks, and he had a cannon for an arm.
I said it yesterday. He had the body type of Cam Newton. He had the arm of Brett Favre and the brains of a Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, or Aaron Rodgers. Put him in the NFL for his entire career, and these guys that are in today's game aren't touching his records.
For me, I was looking Bart Starr, Jim Kelly. I'm going with Bart Starr for all the reasons I've said so far. I just look at the overall list. Packers won for me.
Well, you put a special teamer on your Mount Rushmore, so made that decision.
The greatest special teamer that may have ever played. I'm not taking anything away from Steve Trasker at all.
The quarterback decision made this tough for me because, again, I do lean towards Warren Moon on this one, but Reggie White versus Javon Curse, that's not even a conversation. Paul Hornung and Devontae Adams, in my opinion, do beat the 2 running backs for the Titans. I also went Green Bay Packers. You can call us homers all you want. Tell us why we're wrong. Green Bay Packers are the Super Bowl winners based off of Mount Rushmores for both of us. What do you think?
This has been fun. I've enjoyed looking back at the history of all of these franchises to pick each team here. Now we get to watch the actual games.
I can't wait. I'm hoping that this comes into fruition and our Packers do end up winning it this year as well, cementing my pick of Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. And I'll expect an apology from you for Aaron Rodgers and myself once that does actually happen.
That will be 2 for Aaron, and that will be outstanding. I'll be the happiest guy in the room. I'll still be saying Bart Starr is the best quarterback for the Packers of all time.
Yeah, Bart Starr was definitely a 4-time MVP. Got it. Makes sense. Anyways, we're going to move on. Let us know in the comments below what you and your family think. Like you always hear me say, I want to know what your dad, what your son, what your daughter, grandfather, you know how your family works. I want you to let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to do this right here. Like and subscribe. And also hit that little notification bell. We do put out new videos every single week, and we'd love for you to get notified. Hopefully you have as much fun watching this as we have fun making this. Any last words before we take off?
Yeah, I'm going to encourage everybody to just share this with all of your friends. We're a newer channel. Let's get it out there, and and let's get the conversation going around the country.
100% agree. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. This has been Sports Talk with Dad, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.